So we're going to take these objects, bank account and stock holding, and a third object which we'll define in a moment, personal property, and unify them under a valuable interface. Bank account we've seen before, and so we can start it with an initial balance and get the balance. We can deposit money, and get balance is returning the current value of the bank account. For stock holding, this is what we had before, and while we have accessors to retrieve the various instance variable values, we don't have a way to think about its current value. So I'm going to make a method, get current value, and this is going to return the number of shares times the price per share. Now that's going to give me a double, but I want this to be an int, so I'm going to end up converting it. Think about the price per share as perhaps having fractional cents or dollars, and we'll simply get rid of the excess after the decimal point and return it as an integer value. Okay, so we have bank account and stock holding, and we're going to introduce this new interface. So we're going to define it. Instead of picking class, we're going to pick interface, and it's called valuable. And the only method this offers, get liquid value. So we want to be able to get the liquid value of several different kinds of things, a bank account, stock holding, and valuable. Now for bank account, if I insist that this implements that interface, the problem is it doesn't really offer that method, but Java in Eclipse gives me a hint to add the unimplemented method. And so there it is, get liquid value. And this is easy. I can just return get balance as the liquid value of the bank account. And let's save this. And we have to return this thing here. Okay, so now we've satisfied the interface. Liquid value is coming from the interface valuable, and inside a bank account, simply the value of the account is its liquid value. What about a stock holding? Well, let's insist also that this implements valuable. And I'll add the unimplemented method, which in this case is all the way down here. Let me move it up because it should be more prominent than that. And the place to add it, or the way to think about it, is that the liquid value of a stock is simply its current value. So I'll do something similar with what I did to bank account. I'll return this dot get current value. Okay, so now we have two different objects, both stock holding and bank account, which can both implement valuable. I want to add a third kind of object based on the description that was given, and this is a personal property object, and I can specify which interfaces it should implement here, and I will pick valuable, so it knows about that there. I'll say OK and finish. And then Eclipse is nice enough to generate the method that's proper for getLiquidValue and to declare that this class implements valuable. And it has a couple of instance variables. It's got an initial value, which turns out to be a final. So let's make this private final int initial value. And it has years old, which can change. So it's not final. And let's make the constructor. For the constructor, years old is going to be 0 when the object is born, so I don't care about that as a parameter of the constructor. I'm just going to base it on the initial value. There's a nice constructor for what we want to do. And so calling this constructor, we don't need the super. I'll just get rid of that to make it cleaner. We'll set up the initial value properly. Now we're also supposed to return, if we're asked to, the depreciated value of this particular personal property according to a formula which is simply the initial value times 0.080 raised to the years old power. That's a fairly simple formula. And so I can just return this dot initial value times, and I do exponentiation by using math.pow, and 0.80 is the base, and years old is the exponent. Now this is going to be a double, so I'll do the same thing I had to do for stock holding, and say, well, whatever that is, we're going to take only the integer part of it, and so I will cast it to be an int. So there's our depreciated value method, and we need to have a way to age the personal property. So let's make a method that does that. We could make a set years old, but it's supposed to only increment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the method called age. Well, that's ambiguous. How about a method year older? And we're going to say this dot years old, this dot years old plus 1. And we should generate a toString for this. But the automatic toString isn't going to be that useful, so let's do one by hand. We'll put both the initial and the current value. And that's not a bad thing to say about the personal property. Now, this implements valuable, but right now that returns 0. But we have a method that's appropriate. We're just going to return this dot depreciated value. So we have 3 different objects: bank account, personal property, and stock holding, all of which implement valuable.